Hi, I'm Bill Bradley. Join me for a recent excerpt of American Voices. You might think it'd be difficult to play in the NFL while getting your PhD, but that's what John Urschel did. He has two passions, really, football and mathematics. He was an offensive lineman for the Baltimore Ravens, and he's a PhD candidate in mathematics at MIT. He's also working to make sure African Americans are represented in the field of mathematics. John Urschel's book is called Mind and Matter, A Life in Math and Football. John, welcome to American Voices.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so where'd you grow up?
Well, I was born in Canada, but I spent most of my years growing up in Buffalo, New York, actually.
Oh, hey, yeah, I know Buffalo. Nice winters.
Yeah, it's not too bad. I mean, given that I was born in Winnipeg, I suppose winters in Buffalo aren't so bad.
Maybe not as much wind.
Yeah, exactly.
Growing up, tell us how you got interested in math and what role your mother played in that interest in nurturing it.
I was told that even when I was a young child, that I've always had an interest in sort of quantitative things. And I know, at least as far back as I can remember, I've always just been inherently a curious person, curious why certain things are the way they are, curious about how things work. And I guess when I was little, I just really enjoyed solving puzzles.
What was your favorite
type of puzzle? I really liked, they have these puzzles, these like logic puzzles where they tell you the names of a bunch of different people, and you have to be able to tell, who has which dog, who drives what car, who lives in what house, and who's married to who. These sorts of logic puzzles. These are puzzles which I especially enjoyed when I was young. But I did all sorts of puzzles.
So you had an interest in math or puzzles, quantitative things since very early age. And what role did your mother play in kind of encouraging you?
Well, the biggest thing is she just she supported me. She made sure I had sort of every resource available to me that I could possibly want. And this is something that was fundamentally important to her because she was the first person in her family to go to college, and she felt that sort of in her life, what she could sort of grow up to be and what she could actually do was really held back from the household she was born into.
What do you mean?
Well, in the sense that both her parents, so her mother stopped going to school after 8th grade just because her mother grew up in the segregated South. And so for Black children, they all went to school in one classroom in a church, and class stopped after 8th grade. So her mother was a seamstress. Her father had to drop out of high school to help support his family, which he did by paving roads. And he eventually later got his GED, or the GED equivalent of the time. And he ended up working a job at General Motors. And so sort of just growing up, she didn't grow up in a family who sort of knew much about education. She grew up going to sort of a school system or a high school in which, the type of school where, there's like metal detectors when you come in, and sort of like.
Where was that?
In Cincinnati. But, it's a school in which sort of like the main goal is to get the kids to graduate, not so much to sort of.
Sure.
Not focusing on, what they're going to sort of do after so much.
So was she interested in math?
Yeah. She loved math. It was her best subject. And she ended up getting a scholarship to the University of Cincinnati. And so she ended up going there. But sort of along the way, she really wanted to pursue a degree in a STEM field, but she sort of felt like she was underprepared, and she felt that she, didn't quite belong. And she felt that sort of her classmates and her professors just sort of like inherently doubted her and her ability to do math and science. One thing that was really important to my mother is that, me, her child, that if I didn't grow up to be something, or if I wanted to do something, She wanted to make sure that the only thing that would hold me back from becoming whatever it is I wanted to be would either be a lack of talent, a lack of work ethic, or just, plain old bad luck. But the thing she really didn't want is that what I could be or what I wanted to do, she didn't want that to be held back based on the household I was born into. And so when I was young, it was really important to her that she introduced me to many different things and that she made sure that I sort of had resources available to me.
How did she introduce you to math?
I can say that, at least to my recollection, she did not push me towards math. She tried to encourage me in all areas. She would buy me books to read. She would, do lots of different things that would touch on different areas and different disciplines. But what she noticed very early on is that I was really drawn towards the puzzles. I was really drawn towards quantitative thinking. I wasn't so interested in reading books about, novels or whatever, books there may be. I was really interested in seeing puzzles, seeing problems, and trying to solve them.
So what excited you about math?
Back then? I don't know. I don't know that I can quite say. I mean, I was too young to remember. I can only tell you that, what people have told me about how interested I was at the time. I can tell you since then, the thing that really interests me about math is that it's a really beautiful and powerful language to help us understand the world we live in and to help us solve problems. Really, like mathematics at its core is this sort of powerful set of tools. And as someone who likes problem solving, I think that math really was very natural for me.
Well, give me an example of a problem that math solves.
Sure, absolutely. I can actually give you a funny example because funny in the sense that what I'm about to describe to you, it sounds kind of like the type of made up math problem you might have come across when you were studying in grade school. Maybe you've come across these problems where you have some backyard or you have some sort of region and you need to fence it in. And you want to know, how much fencing do you need for the region that you've described, like for your backyard? And this very much sounds like a made up math problem in many ways because I feel like this is a problem I had to sort of solve on numerous occasions for different sort of, shapes of a backyard when I was in grade school. Well, I can tell you a friend of mine who I actually played football with actually called me one day not too long ago.
No,
because
really?
He had to fence in his backyard.
Is that
and
right?
So he perfectly described to me sort of like what his backyard looks like, what the sort of the curvature is, what he has in mind, what he wants to do. And he wanted to ask me like how much like sort of units of things he needed. So, okay, that's just like one sort of simple example that comes to mind. And that's a sort of very low level example that probably any person can relate to, I would say. But I can tell you that, personally, the sort of things that I like thinking about right now and the things that I work on are more related to using math to try to solve important high-level problems that relate to computer science, that relate to computing problems. And that's more complicated to describe, but
right. But back then, what math problem did you find exciting?
Back then, I can tell you, I had very little concern with application. Somehow, back when I was younger,
it was just the system itself that you were entering.
It was something in itself, the pure wonder of coming to understand something. And I was completely unconcerned with practicality. I was more concerned with sort of challenge and beauty.
Your father inspired you to play football. I understand there's a picture that you saw when he played college football. Where did he play, and what do you remember about what you felt looking at that photo?
Yeah, my father, he had a career path not too different from my own. He played college football at the University of Alberta, and while he was playing football in his later years, he was actually simultaneously in medical school. And the photo which you're referencing was a picture of him in college in his pad sort of like in action. And he had this in his home office. And I remember when I would visit him, I would look at it and I would kind of like, look at it with some sense of awe. And in some ways, I really wanted to be like my father. And so I can say that he's certainly 100% the reason that I started playing football.
There's more of my conversation with John Urschel.
My father retired from surgery, and he actually went back to school and he got a master's degree in economics. And so he ended up doing a lot of mathematical work. And so I can say that somehow my father was the person who really sort of had an influence on me mathematically from middle school onward.
Plus two-time Grammy nominee, Eliza Gilkinson.
I was waiting for someone to find me and, prop me up and put me out there. I really had a wake-up call.
It's coming up. Stay with us. I'm Bill Bradley, and we're back now on American Voices with John Urschel. He was an offensive lineman for the Baltimore Ravens, and he's a PhD candidate in mathematics at MIT.
If you lack this ability to compartmentalize things, then as soon as one part of your life is in some sort of, is out of whack, now all of a sudden your whole life starts to fall apart.
So, John, your father, give me some example of some moments around football that you shared with your father.
In high school, my father went to every game of mine. Early on, he just went because he thought it was nice I was playing football. He thought it might be fun for me. But as I started playing more and more, and it became more and more clear that I was a talented football player, he started to become more involved in my coaching. So as it became sort of fairly clear that I could potentially play college football, and who knows after that, he would start to come to my games. He would sort of watch through the end zone with like binoculars. He would sort of take notes throughout the game, and then after the game, we would go out together somewhere. We would have dinner, and he would sort of give me notes about the game, and he would talk.
Wow, what a great relationship!
Yeah. So, and I can tell you that in the off season in high school, he would train me. He even he bought us both a set of football pads. So we both had shoulder pads and a helmet and all these other things. And we would actually do football drills in the off season.
Really? With your father?
And like early on, he would just like put me on my back, like play after play. And I really owe my father a lot when it comes to my football development. Like I can say with absolute certainty, it's my father who taught me how to hit.
So what does that mean to people who don't play football? How to hit?
So as an offensive lineman, which I was in football, my primary job when there's a running play is to block someone and to sort of physically move someone out of position, to sort of like move them away from the person with the ball.
Right.
And when there's something called a pass, my primary responsibility is to stop someone from reaching who has the ball. So there's slightly different responsibilities, but especially in the former description, it's really important that I'm capable of sort of running at someone and delivering a blow to them, like trying to knock them over or trying to sort of move them some distance away from where they are. And so I can say that my father is really the primary person who taught me how to do that and how to do that sort of violently and how to do that well, I would say.
And so your mother was math, your father was football.
I would say somehow my father was everything. I mean, yes, my mother strongly pushed math, but my father, he was, in his prime, he was one of the sort of top thoracic surgeons sort of like in the world. When he retired from surgery, he was the chief of surgery at Harvard's hospital in Boston. He was someone who was very good at football when he played, but also someone who was sort of quite driven, just in all aspects of his life. And so, in fact, I would say, though my mother pushed math when I was young, when it comes to my mathematical development, I would say from middle school onward, my father had the sort of primary responsibility there. He was actually a great sort of advisor to me when I was sort of trying to figure out what I wanted to do when I was in college, let's say, academically. My father retired from surgery, and he actually went back to school and he got a master's degree in economics.
Wow.
And so he ended up doing a lot of mathematical work. And so I can say that somehow my father was the person who really sort of had an influence on me mathematically from middle school onward in many ways, because in his sort of graduate work, he was studying the same things I wanted to learn about. And so, for instance, I can tell you, I started learning linear algebra when my father was learning linear algebra for his sort of like his degree in economics. I started learning calculus and like calculus related themes because I got to learn about these things and see these things because of what my dad was doing.
Mm-hmm. So here are these two interests. In your book, you talk about your ability to compartmentalize. Do you think that's a good ability to have, and why?
I think it's a really good ability to have, because somehow if you lack this ability to compartmentalize things, then as soon as one part of your life is in some sort of, is out of whack or is in some sort of distress, now all of a sudden your whole life starts to fall apart. And we all have so many different aspects of our lives. And if our whole lives fall apart every time some part of our lives do, then somehow we're going to be sort of stressed and unhappy a large percentage of the time. And so I think it's important to try to keep things to themselves.
So do your friends in math and your friends in football ever meet?
Yeah, in college, they met all the time. My football friends would come to my office often. So it was not uncommon for my football friends to meet my math friends, I would say.
Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about playing in the NFL with the Ravens and doing that when you're studying for a PhD at MIT in math. How do you balance all this? Yeah,
playing in the NFL was really enjoyable. It was nice to make a little bit of money, and there's something to be said for sort of playing a sport that you've been playing for so long, to play it at the highest level. There's something really fulfilling about that.
So what's your favorite moment on the field as a Raven?
I remember my very first year, I played a playoff game at Pittsburgh. And this was an amazing environment. Playing a playoff game at Pittsburgh at night, and just the environment in the stadium, it was something I'll never forget.
What about it?
Well, it was a bunch of Pittsburgh fans who you could just feel their energy. It was a cold night, but it somehow, their sort of like energy really made it quite warm. And they just really did not like us. And they really did not like us. And it was just a great environment to play football in. Like,
right.
You could feel the hatred. It was quite nice. We won the game after.
Well, that's the sweetest part of the story.
Yeah.
So what about in the classroom, your favorite moment?
I would say nothing immediately comes to mind, just because math is, it's slower. When you're working on a math problem, these things take time. They take months. It's hard to point to a moment, but there are some sort of like key mathematical results where sometimes you get this aha moment when you're working on something and you don't quite understand what's going on, but then you finally sort of like get some moment of clarity. I'd say those are really
the light bulb moment.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell us about MoMath. What kind of work are you doing with them? What is it?
I've been working with the National Museum of Math in New York City, and we've been working on a lot of different things. One recent program which we did called Bending the Arc was a panel featuring a number of prominent African-American mathematicians, which was sort of free and open to everyone, just with the aim of encouraging young people in mathematics and showing people in the world, especially sort of a younger population, that mathematics is actually a diverse field full of people with many different perspectives. And the hope is that doing things like this can sort of encourage underrepresented young people to show them that math is something that is for them.
I actually started reading about you on the internet a while back, and I was like, oh my goodness, a Black man, this is like a great role model. Who likes math, he likes sports, this is great. And I heard about this opportunity from my principal, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. What's the best way to move forward in math specifically to get to astrophysics, or is it more of a go into aerospace and work your way up?
So first of all, I would say that a lot of universities, I think most universities, have a specific astrophysics track that you can sort of go towards if that's what you're interested in. I can tell you that I think this is a fascinating area. Although this isn't sort of what I currently work on, I started out sort of like studying how planets move and how they interact with each other. And this was like the most fascinating thing to me. And this is what really drew me to math.
So what do you say to young African Americans, Latinos, or even poor whites who don't have a family of background in education? What do you say to them to get them interested in STEM?
Yeah, first of all, the main thing I would tell them is that, well, these things are important. I would tell them that these fields are not just interesting, but are really important for our world moving forward. And then I would sort of tell them that these fields are ones in which you can make a good living, you can have an enjoyable life, and you can sort of really do something. And I can say that this is really a good career path for people.
Yeah. Well, John, it's been a pleasure speaking to you, and I want you to keep up your career, and you're doing a lot of great things. Thanks for being here on American Voices.
I appreciate that. Thanks for having me.
I've been speaking with John Urschel. He's a former offensive lineman for the Baltimore Ravens, and he's a PhD candidate in mathematics at MIT. His book is called Mind and Matter, A Life in Math and Football. Coming up later, author Spike Carlson on his favorite sound.
You know, it's especially great if one person's drying dishes and another one's sitting on the counter with a glass of wine.
But first, two-time Grammy nominee Eliza Gilkinson is coming up next. I'm Bill Bradley. You're listening to American Voices on Sirius XM Radio. Thank you for listening to American Voices here on my YouTube channel. For more interviews celebrating the goodness and creativity of the American people, click the subscribe button below.